The stars looked different from out here. Ambassador Yuna stood at the observation window of the diplomatic vessel at their own dawn and watched them pass by like scattered diamonds. She had seen these same stars from Earth, but from this distance, they felt closer. More real, more alive. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in silence. They all knew what this mission meant. After 200 years of space travel, humanity had finally received an invitation to join the Galactic Assembly. 12 alien species, united under one government, had watched Earth from afar. Now they were ready to welcome humanity into their family. Or so, they claimed. Representative Taiho walked up beside Yuna. He was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 40 years as a diplomat, solving conflicts on Earth before anyone knew aliens existed. Now he would help humanity take its first steps into a much larger world. "Are you nervous?" he asked. Yuna smiled slightly. "Terrified. But I cannot show it." "Good. Neither can I." The ship slowed as they approached Theron 9, a massive space station built at the edge of neutral territory. It was shaped like a flower, with long petals extending outward into the void. Ships from a dozen different species docked at its ports. Some were elegant and curved. Others were sharp and angular. None of them looked like anything humans had ever built. Captain Jisu's voice came over the speakers. "We are cleared for docking. Assembly representatives will meet us at the main hall in 2 hours." Yuna took a deep breath. 2 hours. In 2 hours, she would speak for 8 billion people. She would represent every human who had ever lived, every dream humanity had ever dreamed. The weight of it pressed down on her shoulders like a mountain. The docking process was smooth. The eternal dawn connected to the station with a soft click, and the airlock opened with a hiss. Yuna stepped forward with Taiho beside her and Captain Jisu behind them. A small group of guards followed, their weapons hidden but ready. The station's interior was beautiful. High ceilings stretched overhead, covered in murals that showed alien worlds and ancient histories. The air smelled faintly of flowers that Yuna could not name. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs. Some walked on 4. Some floated above the ground without any legs at all. They all stopped to stare at the humans. Yuna kept her head high and her face calm. She had expected curiosity. She had expected wonder. What she had not expected was the pity in their eyes. They looked at her the way adults look at children trying to do something too difficult for them. The main hall was enormous. 12 platforms surrounded a central stage, each one decorated in the style of a different species. The Valorans occupied the highest platform. They were insect-like creatures with 4 arms and shimmering wings. Their speaker, a tall being with silver markings, watched the humans enter with obvious disinterest. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," the speaker said. His voice was translated by devices implanted in Yuna's ear. "We are pleased to finally meet the newest species to achieve space travel. Please, take your place." Yuna looked around. The platform assigned to humanity was the smallest and the lowest. It sat in the corner, barely visible to the rest of the hall. A clear message: "You are not important here." She climbed to the platform without complaint and stood tall. The speaker continued. "The Galactic Assembly has existed for 40,000 years. We have maintained peace and prosperity across 12 systems. Today, we consider adding a 13th member to our family." Murmurs filled the hall. Yuna could not understand most of them, but she recognized the tone: doubt, skepticism, amusement. A Crethany representative spoke next. The Crethany were reptilian beings with scales that change color with their emotions. This one's scales were a dull gray boredom. "We have studied Earth's transmissions for many years. Your species has only recently discovered faster than light travel. Your technology is primitive. Your history is marked by constant warfare. What do you offer to the assembly?" Taiho stepped forward. His voice was steady and calm. "We offer friendship. We offer cooperation. We offer the desire to learn from those wiser than ourselves." The hall was silent for a moment. Then the Valoran speaker made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "A humble answer," the speaker said. "Perhaps there is hope for your kind after all. Very well. The Assembly will grant Earth provisional membership. You may observe our proceedings, but you may not vote. You may travel within designated zones, but certain areas are restricted. These terms are non-negotiable." Yuna felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had expected this. Humanity was new here. They would have to prove themselves. "We accept these terms," she said. "And we have one request." The speaker's wings twitched. "A request? Already?" "We wish to access the Galactic Archive. We want to learn about the history of this assembly and the species within it. We want to understand our place in the galaxy." The hall fell silent again. The representatives looked at each other with expressions that Yuna could not read. Then the speaker waved one of his forearms dismissively. "Granted. The archive is open to all members. You may study whatever you wish." Yuna bowed slightly. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, she caught Captain Jisu's eye. The captain gave her a small nod. The first step was complete. They were inside. Later, aboard the Eternal Dawn, Taiho sat down heavily in his chair. "That went better than expected." Yuna shook her head. "They think we are children. They gave us access to the archive because they believe we cannot find anything useful. And can we?" Yuna looked out the window at the station floating in the darkness. "I do not know, but I intend to find out. There is something strange about this place. Something they are not telling us." Taiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Then we keep our eyes open. And we wait." The stars continued their endless dance outside the window. Somewhere in the archive, secrets waited to be discovered. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, but this was only the beginning. The Galactic Archive was the largest library in known space. It occupied an entire section of Theron 9, stretching across dozens of floors and containing records from every civilization that had ever joined the Assembly. Millions of years of history waited within its walls, stored in crystals and data cores and formats that humans could barely understand. Researcher Minji stood at the entrance and felt very small. She was young for this mission, only 32 years old. But she was the best historian Earth had, and Ambassador Yuna had specifically requested her. Now she understood why. This place was overwhelming. Where could anyone even begin? Archivist Dong-Yoon walked up beside her. He was older, with tired eyes and careful hands. He had spent his entire life studying ancient documents on Earth. Now he would study the documents of the stars. "It is beautiful," he said quietly. "It is terrifying," Minji replied. Engineer Sujin joined them a moment later. She was practical and direct, the kind of person who cared about numbers more than words. "We have 3 weeks before the ambassador needs her report. Let us not waste time." They entered the archive together. The first few days were frustrating. The filing system was designed for species that thought differently than humans. Categories overlapped in strange ways. Some records were locked behind permissions they did not have. Others were written in languages that even the translation devices struggled with. But slowly, they began to make progress. Dong-Yoon focused on finding records about Earth. The Assembly had been watching humanity for centuries, and they had kept detailed notes. He found reports about human radio signals, observations of human cities, even analysis of human art and music. The aliens had been studying humanity like scientists studying animals in a cage. Meanwhile, Sujin worked on understanding the dating systems. Each species measured time differently. The Valorans counted years by the rotation of their home star. The Krethani used a calendar based on their mating cycles. Converting everything to Earth years was complicated, but Sujin was patient. Minji focused on the oldest records she could find. The assembly claimed to be 40,000 years old. But who had founded it? Which species was truly the eldest? The answer, according to every official document, was the Mandari. They were crystalline beings who communicated through vibrations in their bodies. Their recorded history stretched back over 12,000 years. They were considered the wise elders of the galaxy, the first species to achieve true civilization. But something did not feel right. On the 8th day, Sujin called an emergency meeting in their quarters. "I have found something strange," she said. Her face was pale. "I have been converting all the timelines to Earth standard. The Valorans claim 40,000 years of spacefaring history. The Mandari claim 12,000 years of civilization. The Krethani claim 8,000. Minji nodded. "Yes, we knew this already. But look." Sujin displayed her calculations on the wall screen. Humans achieved fire approximately 1 million years ago. We developed agriculture 12,000 years ago. Written language 5,000 years ago. We built monuments that still stand from 4,000 years ago. Donghyun frowned. "What are you saying?" Sujin's hands were shaking slightly. "I am saying that when the Valorans first discovered fire, humans had already built the pyramids. When the Mandari began keeping records, humans had already created empires that rose and fell." The room was silent. Minji felt her heart beating faster. "That cannot be right. Check your calculations again." "I have checked them 17 times. The data comes directly from the archive, verified by the assembly's own systems." Sujin took a deep breath. "Humanity is not the youngest species in the galaxy. We are the oldest, by a significant margin." Dongyun sat down heavily. "But that makes no sense. If we are the oldest, why did we reach the star so late?" Minji thought about human history. The wars, the plagues, the times humanity had nearly destroyed itself. The ice ages, the meteor strikes, the endless cycles of building and destruction. "Because we almost did not survive," she said slowly. "Every other species had peaceful development. They built their civilizations without the obstacles we faced. We fought every step of the way. Against nature, against each other, against ourselves. We crawled when they walked," Dongyun said quietly. Sujin nodded. "But we crawled further. Much, much further." Minji walked to the window and stared out at the station. Aliens moved through the corridors below, going about their daily lives. They believed themselves ancient and wise. They looked at humanity with pity and condescension, and they were wrong. "We need to tell the ambassador," Minji said. "Wait." Dongyun held up his hand. "This information is explosive. If we reveal it carelessly, it could destabilize the entire assembly. Some species might refuse to believe it. Others might react with fear or anger." Sujin crossed her arms. "Are you suggesting we hide the truth?" "I am suggesting we be careful with it. There is a difference." Minji considered this. Dongyun was right. This discovery changed everything. The Mandari had built their entire identity around being the firstborn. The Valorans derived their authority from their supposed seniority. If humans were revealed as the true elders, we tell the ambassador, Minji decided. She will know how to proceed. But we tell no one else until she gives the order. The others nodded that night. Minji sent a coded message to the Eternal Dawn. Ambassador Yuna responded within minutes, requesting an immediate meeting. By morning, the entire human delegation knew the truth, and now they faced an impossible choice: reveal the truth and risk destroying the fragile galactic peace, or remain silent and let humanity continue to be treated as children. Una stood before her advisors with fire in her eyes. We did not come this far to hide who we are. The galaxy will learn the truth about humanity. Taiho nodded slowly. Then we must be clever about how we reveal it. One wrong step, and everything falls apart. Captain Jisoo cracked her knuckles. Tell me when and where. I will make sure we are ready for whatever comes next. The stars outside continued their eternal dance. Somewhere in the archive, the evidence waited. Humanity had been silent for too long. It was time to speak. The assembly hall was full when the humans arrived. Representatives from all 12 species occupied their platforms. Their attention focused on routine matters of trade and territory. No one expected anything unusual from today's session. Ambassador. Una climbed to humanity's small platform and waited. Beside her stood Taiho, calm as always. Behind them, Captain Jisoo watched the exits with careful eyes. Historian Yoonji held a small device in her hands, ready to display the information that would change everything. Analyst Hyunwoo stood nearby with backup copies of all the evidence. The Valoran speaker finished discussing a mining dispute and turned toward the human delegation with mild curiosity. The representatives from Earth have requested time to address the assembly. This is unusual for a provisional member, but we will allow it. Please, speak. Una stepped forward. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady. Thank you, Speaker. We come before the assembly with important information. Information that concerns every species present. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The Crethony representative leaned forward, his scales flickering with interest. The Mandari elder, a being of pure crystal that hummed with ancient energy, remained perfectly still. During our time in the Galactic Archive, Una continued, we conducted research into the history of this assembly and its member species. We wish to understand our place in the galaxy. What we discovered surprised us. The speaker made an impatient gesture. Please proceed to the point, Ambassador. Una nodded to Yoonji. The historian activated her device, and holographic images appeared above the central stage. They showed a timeline long, stretching back into the distant past. This is the history of intelligent life in this region of space, Yoonji explained. Her voice was calm and professional. Each colored line represents a different species and their development over time. The blue line shows when each species achieved fire. The green line shows agriculture. The yellow line shows written language. The red line shows space travel. The representatives studied the display with confusion. At first glance, it looked like a standard historical chart. Humanity's line was clearly visible at the bottom, showing their recent achievements. Then Sujin adjusted the scale. The timeline expanded. It stretched backward, far beyond what anyone expected. And as it grew, the positions of the lines changed dramatically. Humanity's line did not stay at the bottom. It rose, higher and higher, passing species after species, until it sat alone at the very top of the chart. The hall went completely silent. According to data from this assembly's own archive, Yoonji continued, verified by analyst Hyunwoo using standard protocols, humanity achieved fire approximately 1 million years ago. We developed agriculture 12,000 years ago. At the same time, the Mandari began keeping their first records. We had written language and built permanent monuments before most species in this room existed. The Valoran speaker's wings began clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. This is impossible. Your species only achieved space travel 2 centuries ago. Captain Jisoo stepped forward. Her voice was hard as steel. That is correct. And do you know why, Speaker? Because we almost destroyed ourselves, repeatedly, She gestured, and new images appeared. They showed Earth's history, the wars, the famines, the plagues, the moments when humanity had stood at the edge of extinction and somehow pulled back. 2 world wars, Jisoo said. Nuclear weapons capable of ending all life on our planet. Environmental collapse that we barely survived. Diseases that killed millions. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Meteor strikes that blocked out the sun. She paused and looked around the hall at the stunned aliens. Every species here had relatively peaceful development. Your biggest challenges were natural disasters and resource shortages. But humanity? Humanity fought for every single day of our existence. We crawled through blood and fire to reach the stars. We arrived late, not because we were slow, but because we survived what would have killed anyone else. The Crethony representative spoke, his scales now bright red with alarm. This data must be falsified. Humans are newcomers. Everyone knows this. Hyunwoo shook his head. The evidence comes from your own archive. We use your own verification systems. You are welcome to check our work. You will find no errors. The Mandari elder finally moved, its crystalline body vibrating with complex harmonics. The translator struggled to interpret the sounds. If this is true, if humanity is older than even the Mandari, then everything we believed about our place in the cosmos is wrong. Not wrong, Yuna said gently. Simply incomplete. The Mandari are wise and ancient. That has not changed. But perhaps ancient is not the same as oldest. Chaos erupted. The Valorans demanded immediate suspension of human access to the archive. The Crethani called for an independent investigation. Several smaller species simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had heard. Through it all, Yuna remained calm. She had expected this reaction. She had prepared for it. We did not reveal this information to claim power, she said loudly, cutting through the noise. We revealed it because the truth matters. The galaxy deserves to know its real history. The Valoran speaker glared at her with compound eyes full of barely contained fury. And what do you expect us to do with this truth, Ambassador? Simply accept that our entire understanding of galactic history is wrong. Yuna met his gaze without flinching. I expect you to do what any intelligent species would do. Examine the evidence. Discuss the implications. And then decide how to move forward together. She turned and walked toward the exit, her delegation following behind her. This assembly was built on the idea that older species should guide younger ones, she said over her shoulder. Perhaps it is time to reconsider what older truly means. The door closed behind them, in the hall. The representatives continued arguing, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against a shore. The holographic timeline still floated above the stage. Humanity's line shining at the very top. The galaxy would never be the same. Yuna walked down the corridor, with her team around her. Taeho looked thoughtful. Jisoo looked satisfied. Yoonji and Hyunwoo looked exhausted but proud. What happens now? Yoonji asked. Yuna smiled grimly. Now we wait, and we prepare for whatever comes next. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance. They had witnessed civilizations rise and fall for billions of years. Now they watched as another old truth finally came to light. Humanity was home. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every inhabited world knew what the humans had revealed. Communication networks that usually carried trade reports and diplomatic messages were suddenly flooded with debates, arguments, and wild speculation. Some believed the evidence immediately. Others refused to accept it at all. Most fell somewhere in between, confused and uncertain about what this meant for their understanding of the universe. On Earth, Admiral Junho sat in the command center of the Unified Council and watched the reports come in. His face was grim. Around him, aides rushed back and forth, coordinating responses to dozens of simultaneous crises. The Crethany ambassador has demanded a meeting, one aide reported. They are threatening to withdraw from the assembly entirely. The Valorans have suspended all trade agreements with human colonies, another added. They are calling our revelation an act of aggression. Several smaller species have reached out privately, a third aide said. They want to establish direct diplomatic channels with Earth, separate from the assembly. Junho rubbed his temples. What about the Mandari? The aides exchanged glances. Nothing yet. They have gone completely silent. That worried Junho more than anything else. The Mandari were the supposed firstborn, the species whose entire identity was built around being the eldest. If humanity was truly older than them, how would they react? Across the galaxy, the answer was already forming. On the Mandari homeworld, the Elder Council gathered in chambers that had stood for 12,000 years. Crystals of every color filled the vast hall, each one representing a different lineage of their species. They hummed together in complex harmonies, debating what to do. The humans lie, one elder vibrated angrily. They have manipulated the archive. This is a trick to gain power. The evidence has been verified independently, another elder responded. Our own scientists have confirmed the data. There is no manipulation. Then the archive itself is flawed. The dating systems are incorrect. The dating systems were created by our ancestors. Are you saying our ancestors were wrong? The debate continued for hours. Tempers flared. Old grudges resurfaced. The harmony that had defined Mandari culture for millennia began to crack. Finally, the eldest of them all, a crystal so ancient that it had turned almost black with age, spoke. Its voice was soft but carried throughout the chamber. We have spent 12,000 years believing ourselves the first. We have built our laws, our philosophy, our entire civilization around this belief. And now we learn it was wrong. The eldest paused. But does being second make us less than what we are? Does it change the wisdom we have gathered? The peace we have maintained? The chamber fell silent. Perhaps, the eldest continued, we have been asking the wrong question. We asked, who came first? But maybe the better question is, who survived? The humans endured things that would have destroyed any of us. They crawled through darkness that we cannot imagine. And yet, they are here, standing beside us, asking not for dominance, but for partnership. One of the younger elders vibrated with uncertainty. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that perhaps being the firstborn was never truly important. What matters is not when we began, but what we become. Back on Theron 9, the political situation continued to deteriorate. The Galactic Assembly had fractured into 3 distinct groups. The Reformists, led by several smaller species and quietly supported by some Mandari, believed the revelation should lead to restructuring the Assembly. They argued that if humanity was truly the eldest, then perhaps humans should have more authority in galactic affairs. The Denialists, led by the Valorans and the Crethany, refused to accept the evidence. They demanded that humanity be expelled from the Assembly entirely. They called the revelation a hostile act, an attempt to destabilize the galactic order for human benefit. The Pragmatists, mostly composed of species focused on trade and economics, simply wanted stability. They did not care who was oldest or youngest. They cared about keeping the peace and maintaining profitable relationships. Ambassador Yuna met with representatives from all 3 groups, trying to find common ground. It was exhausting work. Every conversation was filled with suspicion, fear, and barely hidden resentment. Professor Hana, who had traveled from Earth to advise the delegation, found Yuna late one night in her quarters. The ambassador looked tired. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. You are pushing yourself too hard, Hana said gently. Yuna shook her head. There is too much at stake. If I stop now, everything falls apart. Hannah sat down across from her. Let me ask you something. Why did you reveal the truth? You could have kept it secret. You could have played along with the Assembly's games, slowly building human influence from the shadows. Why choose the difficult path? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired of humanity being treated like children. Because the truth matters, even when it is uncomfortable. And because... She hesitated. Because I believe we have something to offer. Not just technology or resources, but perspective. Wisdom gained through suffering. Lessons learned through failure. And if the galaxy rejects those lessons, then at least we will have tried. Taiho entered the room with news. The Mandari have broken their silence. Their eldest has released a public statement. Yuna straightened. What does it say? Taiho smiled slightly, the first smile any of them had shown in days. It says that the Mandari accept the truth of humanity's age. And it proposes a meeting between the eldest and you, personally, to discuss the future of the galaxy. Yuna felt hope stir in her chest. The Mandari were respected throughout the galaxy. If they publicly accepted humanity's claim, others would follow. When and where? She asked. Tomorrow. Here on the station. Neutral ground. Yuna stood and straightened her clothes. The exhaustion did not disappear, but something else replaced it. Purpose. Determination. The knowledge that after millions of years of struggle, humanity finally had a chance to claim its true place among the stars. Then we have work to do, she said. Let us prepare. Outside the window, the stars burned on. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched species reach for greatness and crumble into dust. Now they watched as humanity faced its greatest test. Not a test of strength or technology. A test of wisdom. A test of whether a species that had nearly destroyed itself 1,000 times could finally help build something lasting. The reckoning had begun. 3 months had passed since the revelation, and the galaxy was still holding its breath. The meeting between Ambassador Yuna and the Mandari eldest had changed everything. For 6 hours, they had talked in a private chamber on Theron 9. No aides, no recorders, no witnesses. When they emerged, both looked exhausted but peaceful. Neither revealed what they had discussed, but the results spoke for themselves. The Mandari publicly endorsed humanity's claim. Their statement was simple. We have examined the evidence. We have spoken with the human ambassador. We believe they are who they say they are. The first power, lost to time and their own struggles, now returned. We welcome them as elders. The effect was immediate. The pragmatists shifted their support toward the reformists. Several denialist species quietly stepped back from their opposition. Even the Valorns, stubborn as they were, could not ignore the weight of Mandari approval. Now, the assembly had gathered for a historic session. Every species was present. Every platform was full. The hall hummed with tension and anticipation. Ambassador Yuna stood at the central stage. She looked different from the nervous diplomat who had arrived 3 months ago. Her back was straight. Her eyes were clear. She had faced the galaxy's fear and doubt, and she had not broken. Thank you all for coming, she began. Her voice carried through the vast space, translated into a dozen languages. I know these past months have been difficult. I know that many of you are still uncertain about what humanity's true age means. For the future of this assembly, she paused and looked around at the gathered representatives. Let me tell you what it means to U.S. She stepped forward, moving away from the podium, speaking directly to the aliens who watched her with wary eyes. Humanity did not reveal the truth because we wanted power. We did not do it because we wanted to rule the galaxy or overthrow the assembly. We did it because we believed that relationships built on lies cannot last. We did it because after millions of years of deceiving ourselves, we have finally learned the value of honesty. The Valaran speaker shifted on his platform. His wings were still, but his compound eyes tracked Yuna's every movement. Some of you believe that being the oldest species gives us the right to lead, Yuna continued. That is not what we believe. Age does not equal wisdom. Time does not equal authority. If it did, humanity would be the wisest species in the galaxy. I promise you we are not. A ripple of surprise moved through the hall. This was not what anyone had expected. We nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. We poisoned our own planet. We killed billions of our own people in wars that accomplished nothing. We are not here to claim superiority. We are here to share what we learned from our failures. She gestured, and an image appeared above the stage. It showed Earth blue and green and beautiful, floating in the darkness. This is our home. A world that we almost lost 100 times. Every scar on that planet represents a lesson paid for in blood. We know the cost of war. We know the price of hatred. We know what happens when a species forgets that it shares a universe with others. The image shifted to show the assembly station, surrounded by ships from a dozen different worlds. This assembly has maintained peace for 40,000 years. That is a magnificent achievement. But you did it by keeping secrets, by hiding truths, by creating hierarchies based on age rather than merit. Yuna shook her head. That system was always fragile. One discovery, one revelation, and it nearly collapsed. She turned to face the Mandari eldest, who sat in silent dignity on the highest platform. The eldest taught me something in our meeting. They said that wisdom is not about knowing all the answers. It is about knowing which questions to ask. So I asked myself, what does humanity truly want from the galaxy? Yuna returned to the center of the stage. We do not want to rule. We do not want to dominate. We want something much simpler and much harder. We want partnership. True partnership. Not the kind based on who came first, but the kind based on what we can build together. She took a deep breath. So today, I propose a new agreement. We call it the Accord of Equals. Murmurs filled the hall. Representative Taiho stepped forward with a holographic document, displaying its contents for all to see. Under this accord, seniority grants obligation, not authority. The oldest species, humanity, will take on the greatest responsibility. We will share our history, including our failures. We will provide resources to developing worlds. We will mediate conflicts when asked. We will serve, not rule. The Valaran speaker's voice cut through the noise. And what do you ask in return? Yuna smiled slightly. Only the chance to learn. We have been alone for so long, fighting ourselves, struggling to survive. There is so much we missed while we were busy not dying. The Mandari philosophy, Valaran art, Crethany science. The 1,000 beautiful things that every species in this room has created. She looked around at the gathered aliens, beings of crystal and scale, of wing and tentacle, of forms that humans had never imagined. We want to be part of this family, not as elders standing above you, not as children sitting below, as equals walking side by side toward a future we build together. The hall was silent. Then the Mandari eldest rose. Its crystalline body chimed with ancient harmonics that the translator could barely capture. The Mandari accept this accord. We recognize humanity not as masters, but as partners in the great work of civilization. One by one, other species followed. The pragmatists accepted immediately. Several former denialists joined them. Even the Crethany, after long hesitation, added their voices to the agreement. Finally, only the Valorans remained. The speaker stood frozen on his platform. His wings clicked in rapid patterns that no one could interpret. The entire hall watched him, waiting. Then, Slowly, he lowered his head in the Valoran gesture of acceptance. "The Assembly will adopt the Accord of Equals," he said. His voice was stiff, but the words were real. "May it bring the peace we all desire." The hall erupted in sound, not argument, but something closer to celebration. Species that had viewed each other with suspicion now exchanged gestures of goodwill. The old order was ending. Something new was being born. Captain Jisoo watched from the back of the hall with Lieutenant Boyan beside her. "We did it," Boyan said, wonder in her voice. "We actually did it." Jisoo nodded slowly. "The hardest part is still ahead. Accords are just words. Making them real takes work. Do you think we can do it?" Jisoo thought about Earth. She thought about the wars, the struggles, the countless times humanity had stood at the edge of destruction and chosen to survive. She thought about the strength it took to crawl when others walked, to endure when others would have given up. "Yes," she said finally. "I think we can." Later that night, the Eternal Dawn prepared to depart for Earth. Ambassador Yuna stood at the observation window one last time. Watching Theron 9 shrink in the distance, Taiho joined her. "The Unified Council is very pleased. They're calling this the greatest diplomatic achievement in human history." Yuna smiled tiredly. "History is not finished yet. This was just the first chapter. What comes next?" She watched the stars, those ancient lights that had burned since before life existed on any world. Humanity had finally taken its place among them. Not as conquerors, not as students, as what they had always been, deep down, survivors, teachers, the first among equals. "Now," Yuna said softly, "we do what we have always done. We survive. We adapt. We build something better than what came before." The ship turned toward Earth, carrying news of a galaxy forever changed. Behind them, the stars continued their eternal dance, witnesses to the dawn of a new age. Humanity had finally come home.